My guest in this episode of the Misaal podcast is helping students get ahead by providing them with personalized tutoring and customized testing. His name is Rooshan Aziz, and he's a co-founder of Maqsad. Maqsad's mobile learning platform allows students from grades 9 to 12 to learn and test at their own pace. Let's listen in. Welcome to the Misaal podcast, Rooshan. How are you?
I'm very well. How are you, Zaid?
I'm doing very well. Well, first of all, congratulations. You recently closed your seed round. Kind of a big deal given the current environment. I would love to learn a little bit more about how you pulled that off. But let's start off with first an introduction. Please tell me a little bit about yourself and what problem are you trying to solve with Maqsad?
Thank you so much for those kind words. So I am the co-founder of Maqsad. We started the company about 18 months ago. Maqsad is on a mission to make education accessible for 100 million Pakistani students. More specifically right now, we're focused on the after-school academic support market. It's basically creating solutions, technology, and content for students, mostly high school for now, who want to get support after their school and to really, consolidate their understanding. They currently use a host of offline solutions, and we're digitizing that.
To build Maqsad, I hear that you moved back to Pakistan. So how's that transition been like? It's a kind of a big life decision to make.
I was born and raised in Karachi, and I spent most of my life in high school, and I went to university in the UK, and then I worked there for about 6-7 years. So yeah, it was definitely a big decision. Personally, this is something I had always wanted to do. So me and Taha, both of us wanted to do this. So it was always at the back of our head. So when the time came, while it was a big decision, it wasn't, it wasn't out of the blue for us. We'd been thinking about it for a few years. The transition back, obviously, it was a completely different life. But I think the work and what all we had to do just kept us super busy. So it wasn't really a challenge per se. But yeah, living in London before, living Karachi is completely different. I think one thing is it's not super walkable here. But otherwise, thankfully things have really progressed. So from 10, 12 years ago when I was, a student and living in Karachi. So yeah, the transition, alhamdulillah, has been good. But I think most importantly, it's because of the nature of work that keeps us busy and super grounded and focused.
So I remember when you first started out and you raised your pre-seed round, it was really early, and I believe you did not have a functioning product or a complete team, and you were able to raise money at that time. This was like the peak of maybe not peak, but it was kind of the COVID environment where EdTech startups were having very easy time to raise money. How's the market changed? Because you recently closed another round. How has that changed now that, EdTech is no longer as hot as it was back when COVID was happening?
Yeah, so we raised our pre-seed in 2021. We had a product. It was super basic when we raised it. It did have users, so all of that was there. But yeah, the team was super small from that perspective. And then once we did, get funding, we actually relaunched the product with because it was just quicker to do that rather than, continuing with the old product. And that's why there was a bit of a gap in the middle. Yeah, so the market's completely changed. I would say, where, in the sense that companies just have to go through a lot more processes and due diligence to get to the other side. Just speaking specifically from Maqsad's side, I think there are a bunch of things that, we focused on and that work in our favor. That we're solving a pretty fundamental problem in Pakistan that, people want access to good quality education. It is a necessity. It isn't a luxury of sort. Number two, that, we have built a product that's being used, again and again by our students. So to give you an example, for the last 5 to 6 months, we've pretty much been number one on most days on the Google Play Store education ranking for Pakistan. So obviously that's testament to the product and how much is being used by students. And number three, I think we were quite clear in what you want to achieve and our focus for the next 18 to 24 months. I think all of these factors allowed us to be able to fundraise. Speed Invest is the new investor coming into this round. They've already seeded a bunch of EdTech companies before. And one of them is Go Student that turned out to be a unicorn as well. So, they knew this space well. They had a huge, ton of questions, but thankfully, we done a lot of prep beforehand. So it worked out.
You started off, of course, you and your co-founder, right? So you started out with a small team. Like, so how were you able to scale? What is that one thing that you were able to scale right away after you received funding, in terms of hiring, in terms of technical talent, in terms of content that you were supposed to create?
So obviously we make our own content, as you rightly pointed out. We were able to scale pretty quickly across, education front and the tech front both. We had a sort of a part-time team beforehand, and I assume you're talking about the first round and not this round, or
No, so what I'm talking about is when you raised, when you raised funding, whether it was like early on, even now, what was one thing that you said, okay, if we raise funding, we would go ahead and do this. What was that one thing?
So obviously when we raised our pre-seed, it was super early days. The team, some of it was part-time, some of it was full-time. So then we were able to make everybody full-time. We started off with only a few subjects. You were able to get people from multiple subjects across STEM. So we were able to do that. I think technical talent has been a key focus for us from day one. So I think that was the most pronounced sort of, growth that we could do, because as you know, technical talent is like they compete globally, not only in Pakistan, even though if they're Pakistan based. So that's how we scale that. I think quality of people that we hire has been the number one priority for Taha and I. And that's something that we focused on since day one. If you were to ask you one thing that, is the biggest learning, is that, the hiring processes and the onboarding processes matter more than one would initially think. So that's really been our focus. And yeah, I think mission alignment has also been our focus, that, we were able to, get people on board that were super aligned to the mission and to what we're building, because I think that makes all the difference.
So when you started to build and when you moved back to Pakistan and everything, was there a certain kind of an insight that you felt you had in this industry where you were like, you know what, I know, but this that people don't understand, and I think I can prove it that I am right about A, B, or C?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. So when we started building our product, before anything else, was 2020, end of 2020. And one of the things you realize was more than 97% of Pakistanis access the internet via mobile phone. Nobody really had a mobile application then. That was quite an interesting one. Since then, most people have kind of built mobile application, but that was interesting that, the experiences were pretty suboptimal, given they were kind of made for websites and so on. That's one of our focuses. Number two is obviously we want to personalize it at scale. And then this has obviously been something that where technology really helps, is just providing content to watch is not enough. There has to be an element of being able to make the process more engaging. And to scale it, to be able to deliver true value proposition for the students. So these two insights was what we focused on from day one.
Yeah, so I was going to ask you about the differentiating factor, which you kind of touch on. So I'll just move on to my other question, which is when it comes to of course you have to go and get the students onboarded, right? So how do you approach customer acquisition and customer retention?
In terms of how do we approach customer acquisition, alhamdulillah today, a great chunk of our users are coming organically through word of mouth. So that's really something that we're really happy about. But obviously there is this element of pushing. I mean, Pakistan has about 100 million individuals aged 4 to 22. So it's a huge population that we have to get to across the country. So organic is word of mouth. And then we visit schools. We build, communities, in the sense that, we've got a very active, WhatsApp channels for our students who come in and tell their friends. We obviously if you look at SEO, that's something super important for us. So, if you search for some content, you're able to find us. And then obviously other than that, we also dabble with, digital marketing strategies and how do we make sure that our word gets out to students. So it's been a mix of that. But the aim of that has always been to move towards more organic over time. And that's what we're seeing today, that a significant chunk of our users are searching for Maqsad because they've heard it from somebody or their friends have told them, and they're downloading the app from that perspective. And yes, I think that for us is the focus. And your second question is, in terms of retaining. So yeah, that again is super important for us. So I mean, the more than anything, if we keep delivering value proposition for our students, and if they see value, then they, we notice that they keep coming back. But more importantly, the app should be able to be a place where they come and they invest in the app, and they have something to come back to. I think if you see any product playbook, that's a very important thing, that to be able for any user to invest in the app so that they have any reason to come back and use it again. That's how we think about this. And that's what we see. However, we've got a huge bunch of like top of the funnel. We have students coming from all classes. So it's a very interesting one that we see, right? So across different boards, they have different, schedules. They have, different learning patterns. So for us, our initial focus has been class 9 to 12, and we see, good amount of retention there. But interestingly, and this is something we didn't expect, that we're seeing students from younger classes also come in because they may be an overlap or they want to use some or the other feature. And again, it's super interesting to see how their learning patterns differ from older students.
From what I understand, is it mostly app-based, or do you have like physical in-person classes?
It's only app-based. So we don't even use our website. It's on the app. You come in, you learn on the app.
Can you talk a little bit about like, what's the customer experience or student experience been like any success stories that you can talk about?
I think we have a very strong sense of community and Maqsad, that we want our students to feel part of the community. And as part of that, we keep hearing about stories of students who, for them, this has been life-changing, right? So I'll give you a few examples. So one of our features is, people can ask a question and they can get a video solution and so on. And that's been super popular for students in more remote areas. There are remote parts of KPK where certain students just don't have access to the right sort of academics instructors. And for them, this is a way to get access to the best teachers in the country, to ask a question and get a video solution. That's number one. Number two, a lot of government schools and a lot of schools, sometimes the teacher attendance across certain subjects isn't great. So, I mean, yeah, you may have your math teacher coming in, but your chemistry teacher is a bit, is not always available. So again, we've got students who come to us and say, especially females, who have limitations on going to after-school academic support, saying that, this is the only way we can have a complete education because, our teacher at school, he or she doesn't come on time or doesn't really show up as much. And now because of Maqsad, we're able to keep on track with our education. And really, we hear of these stories quite regularly, and for us, that's super motivating. And this is from across the country, right? So this is, KPK, this is Punjab, this is Sindh. And more interesting, as I mentioned, for females, because for them, going to after-school academic support is a challenge because they sometimes rely on somebody to drop them or pick them. Limited public transport means they can't go there themselves. So yeah, that's super motivating for us as a team.
Grade 9 to grade 12, of course, like you were trying to prepare them for the board exams, right? So is there anything other than the board exams that is taught on the app, or is it just specific to the curriculum?
So in terms of the app, there are a number of ways, number of value addition that we provide. So 9 to 12 board exam is perfectly right that you said, now we're also dabbling into university test prep. If you want to, go to medical school, you can go to engineering school, you can use the app to some extent. Also, I think what we see is younger students, they use the doubt solve feature to send some questions because sometimes there's an overlap in questions and things like that. So yeah, the primary focus is 9 to 12, but we also see, most of other students come in and use the app. Even interestingly, we sometimes see some bit older students come in because, first few semesters of university, let's say if you're doing engineering stuff, there is a lot of overlap in terms of the maths and physics that you have to, revise. So what, yeah, primarily it's 9 to 12.
Kind of mentioned it like, students send the questions and then they get the answers and stuff. So it just reminds me of ChatGPT, which is, everything that everyone is talking about these days is ChatGPT, right? So how does that, do you incorporate anything similar to ChatGPT within your app right now, or do you have any plans in the future?
So the current solution is different from ChatGPT, and that's super localized. It gives that, it's super focused to giving answers in Urdu and explaining it accordingly. As for the future, we have a number of artificial intelligence projects in the pipeline, and we're super excited to launch them. I think, yeah, ChatGPT is definitely a game changer as to, how students learn, how knowledge is accumulated. And yeah, we're super excited to be launching them in the next 6 to 12 months. But what's important is that we deliver something that adds more value than somebody just going to ChatGPT and, just sending a bunch of things. So yeah, more than just adding a wrapper, I think that there has to be a significant element of us adding value. Uh, through artificial intelligence, and we have some solutions in the pipeline which we're super excited to launch.
Forgive me, like I don't have like access to the app or like the lesson, so I might ask you a question which I should probably know the answer to. But how do you ensure like the quality in terms of like do you have like teachers teaching a course? You record it in your studios and then you put it out. Like how does that part work?
Yes, so all of our content is built in house. We have a rigorous QC process, and it's actually multi-team. So we make sure that somebody from one team who makes it, and another team check it, and I think that's really the complexity of how we do things. But yeah, the QC is super strong, and also we keep a very strong pulse on feedback that we're getting. And if needed, then we can kind of, edit it accordingly.
There are a lot of startups that are adjacent to EdTech, right? So they might be doing something very similar to what you're doing, but not exactly the same thing. Is there anything that you wish there was in the market right now, some product that would make your life easier?
We don't really rely on much product in Pakistan, if you're talking about in terms of, getting us and a word out. But I think generally we as a company are super excited each time a digital product comes out, even if it's something completely unrelated to what we're doing. And the reason is that I think the shift towards digital is something that not only one sector has to do, everybody has to do that. So for us, if somebody is doing something completely different in technology, be it groceries, be it healthcare, etc., it could be anything. For us, I think that just builds on the ecosystem as a whole. And I think that benefits all of us. And one example of that has been, how people are now getting comfortable with, digital banking. And I think that's super interesting, because that just gives the impression to people that, okay, sure, we can trust something digital with our money. So again, that's just a mindset shift. That's super interesting to witness. And that's something that we really look forward to.
What would you say if I asked you, like, if there's something that, you wish you had known before you started building your company, or something that you look back and you're like, what, we wish we would have done it differently?
Yeah, I think one of the things that, if we look back is, I think we were told that it's very important to make sure that talent is priority, and yet is doing that. But I think now that we're in the weeds of it, we realize that you can never invest enough in talent, and that means throughout the process, right? From identifying to hiring to making sure the culture is right. And I think that as founders is something that we have to do every day. And that's something that's not super quantifiable. That's something that's a bit vague at times. But thinking on that is probably any new founder that's starting, we would tell them that, just make sure to invest in that, invest in the culture, invest in talent from the beginning, because if you set expectations right, it's also a matter of whenever, and just to give you a bit of more color. So it's also like, you can get the best talent, but if you don't set the expectations right, or set, their roles and responsibility right, that's also not going to be much help. So all of these things that you learn, I think you can never be prepared enough for that. So anybody who's starting, or if I was starting, 18 months ago, that's what I would tell myself, to double down. Alhamdulillah, we've been quite fortunate that, our team is really, really, passionate. But again, I think there could be some things that could save a lot of time and, a lot of learning and talent management. And that is definitely one of them.
So what do you look for? So now, since you're talking about talent, like, what do you look for when you're hiring? Like, is there something specific that you're looking for?
So for us, I think technical competency, obviously, in whatever role they're getting, but over and above, are they passionate about the problem you're solving? Because that makes all the difference. So we've noticed over time that getting people who want to solve the problem, who have some sort of affinity to it, are people who can go over and above to really, build solutions that, are unique. So that's really something you're looking for. Because, you could be super smart, you can have like a stellar CV, but if education is not something that you resonate with, because it's very different to other things, right? It's not like e-commerce, it's not like fintech, where, you can go from a bank to somewhere else. The talent pool is a bit unique that way. So I think if you're not passionate about it, then in most cases, your ability to disrupt, innovate would be limited in our opinion. So I think that's something we look for over and above technical ability. And oftentimes, people are able to upskill themselves if they're passionate. And that's the most interesting thing, right? That, somebody who is not super experienced, but they really, really want to do this, they will spend the hours and time to really upskill themselves. So that's been an interesting insight.
Thank you so much, Rooshan, for being on the Misaal podcast. I really enjoyed talking to you and wish you all the best.
Thank you so much for having me, Zahid, and I appreciate the question, how you went into detail with that. Big fan of the work you're doing for the ecosystem.
Thanks for listening to the Misaal podcast. I hope you enjoyed the podcast and will thank me by writing a review or sharing it on social media. Make sure you follow and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode. Thanks again. See you soon.